Salvete. I'm going to try to speak loudly because I have a vent going near me that just turned on. In this video, we're talking about in plus the accusative. Well, what do I mean by that? What I mean is, so far, you've been learning to use the ablative with the word in. So, for example, in the forest would be in silva. We're using an ablative here. All right, and we've been told that the ablative is the case that we use with the word in. And that's going to continue to be true most of the time, except there are some times where you're going to use the accusative with the word in. And here's the difference. If you've got a forest, I'm actually going to draw you a picture here. If you've got a forest and somebody is running in the forest, currit is the verb runs. It's the verb he runs, she runs, it runs. So let's just say there's an emperor running in the forest. Imperator currit in silva. That means the emperor, there's his little crown thing. There's his toga. And he's just running around, and he's in the forest, and he's running around. Emperor currit in silva. However, if you have the same forest, and then there's a little prairie out here with a little path, and it's leading into the forest. And you have that same emperor with his same little crown thing of leaves and his same toga. And now he's running into the forest. Make that darker. Then what I would say is happening here is imperator in silvam currit. So I'm using in with the ablative here because he's already in the forest doing his thing that we say he's doing. But imperator in silvam, when I say it with the accusative, he's entering the forest. He's verbing the forest. He's entering the forest. This is why we use the accusative, because we use the accusative if you verb something, right? And he's running into the forest. He's entering the forest. We're going to use the accusative. And so that is the major difference with using in. With the accusative, it's you're entering, you're going into. We often translate in with the accusative. If in is with the accusative, we translate in as being into. But here's another way that you can use in with the accusative. You can also translate in as if you do something upon somebody, if you make an attack upon somebody. And so in our book, where we start to learn in with the accusative, I'll move myself here. We begin to learn this on page 57. And on page 56, we had the word impetus, which means attack. So now we can start to describe making an attack upon somebody. And we're going to use in with the accusative to do that. And let me show you how that works. Okay. So if somebody makes an attack, well, then attack needs to be, impetus needs to be in the accusative. And so that would be impetum, right? So let's just say the soldiers made an attack. So milites impetum fecerunt, or fecerunt. Excuse my classical pronunciation there. Okay, so milites impetum fecerunt means the soldiers made an attack. But if we want to say who the soldiers made an attack upon, we're going to use in with the accusative, because in can be translated upon sometimes. So in blank fecerunt. Let's say on the Gauls. Okay, so what are the Gauls? Well, Gaul is Gallus. It's a second declension masculine word, Gallus. So think of jingle bells. Us e o o, us e o o, e orum is os is. And if the soldiers made an attack upon not just one Gaul but many Gauls, and we want to use in with the accusative, then we're going to say in Gallos fecerunt. So milites impetum in Gallos fecerunt. I don't have to include the information in Gallos upon the Gauls. I could just say milites impetum fecerunt. They made an attack. But if I want to say upon whom they made an attack, milites impetum in Gallos fecerunt. Or if they made an attack on one Gaul, in Gallum. So milites impetum in Gallum fecerunt would be they made an attack on the one Gaul, but multiple soldiers probably because of there being multiple Gauls. And so those are the two ways you're going to see in used with the accusative in this book. Okay, and now we're going to take a look at our page in with the accusative here and see what examples they give. Then we're going to do two sentences from exercise 65. Okay, the preposition in may take either the accusative or the ablative case. You have already been using it with the ablative. Whenever there is movement or motion expressed by the in, the accusative is used. So whenever there is movement into, because you could be doing something in, I don't like that explanation, because there was movement when the emperor was running around already in the forest, right? So I don't want you to think, oh, he's running around in the forest, therefore I should use the accusative. No, you'd still say it's occurring in Silva. It's occurring in the forest. It's just because he was already there. Okay? So don't like that explanation. So in Silvam venit. So he came into the forest. So the in is being translated into here. In hostes impetum fecerunt. So they made an attack. So where's the they in the sentence? The they is on the nt ending. So there's the they made, and they made an attack. There's attack in the accusative. In hostes are upon the enemy. Now, notice that hostes is a plural. That's because when we say the enemy in English, sometimes we're referring to more than one people. We don't say the enemies. We kind of just tend to say the enemy and have it be a collective, right? So in Latin, if we're talking about more than one person, when we say the enemy, then we want to use a plural in hostes. If they were literally making an attack upon one enemy person, then it would be in hostem, right, upon the one singular enemy. So don't let that confuse you just because it's a singular word. That's just a quirk of English, okay? And we have some new vocabulary as well. We have the verb fecerunt, which is they made. We have venit, which means he or she came, and then venerunt, which means they came. And notice the nt versus just the t ending for the singular, and then venerunt to the nt ending for the plural. So we're going to use these words potentially within to say somebody came into something, and then use the accusative. We could also use fecerunt for making an attack. We could also just use it for making anything else, making swords or something. And then a couple of other new words. We have in already. When it's used with the ablative, it can mean in or on. But in, when it's being used with the accusative, it can mean into, against, upon, or sometimes also on just being used in a different way in these two cases here. And then also we have nunc and autem joining this list. Nunc means now, autem means however. Okay. And now let's take a look at two sentences from exercise 65. They are propter metum Romanorum Gallien silvas venerunt. Okay, so let's look for our subject and our verb. Our verb is venerunt. We saw that in the vocab list. It means they came. So now I'm looking for a plural subject, something that's nominative plural. That looks like it's an accusative singular. This orum is a genitive, so that's not our subject. Gali could be our subject. Gali looks like a nominative plural. So could the Gauls came? Could the Gauls be the ones that came somewhere? Propter metum Romanorum. So propter is on account of. I'm going to go ahead and write that. On account of what? Propter takes the accusative. This looks like our accusative. On account of fear, Romanorum. That means of the Romans. Fear of the Romans. Makes sense. On account of fear of the Romans, the Gauls came. Oh, and here's our in plus the ablative. In silvas is our in plus the ablative, or sorry, in plus the accusative. So into the forest. So the Gauls came into the forest. So the Gauls came into the. Oh, now is this a accusative singular or an accusative plural? Silvas. That's an accusative plural. So into the forests, we would have to say. Into the forests. If we say into the forest, wouldn't quite get it. And then the next one, impetum in hostes fecerunt. So our verb is, again, it's a plural verb. And so we're looking for a singular subject, something that's a plural subject, something that's nominative and plural. That doesn't look plural. That looks plural. But I see an in with hostes. Is this probably another case of using in with the accusative? Probably. That might be an accusative, hostes. So it's not that the enemies are making something, because then what would that in be doing? We wouldn't need an in there. If the enemies were making something, you could say, what are they making? Maybe they're making this accusative thing. The enemies are making an attack. But then what's that in doing there? No. This is not our subject, even though hostes could be a subject. Because if we do hostes, right, for enemy, and then the plural nominative is hostes, and then it's hostes again down here. So various is ema, ace, ibis, ace, ibis. So there's two aces here, right? I think this in is an in plus accusative. So that's an accusative, hostes, not a nominative one. So I think our subject is just the they, just the word they wrapped up in the end of our verb. Okay? That's my thought process on this one. So I'm going to start my sentence with they made. And then that takes care of that. What did they make? Whatever they made has to be in the accusative. So they made an attack, because that's the only word that's in the accusative. Well, that could be that's in the accusative as well, but that's accusative because it's an in with the accusative. So this is the thing that they made. They made an attack. And then in hostes. And so this is one of our times where in with the accusative, we're going to say upon the enemy or against the enemy. It doesn't really matter which one you say. They kind of mean the same thing. So against or upon. Let's just do against. Against the, and that's an accusative plural. So you could say the enemies, but in English we tend to just collectivify them and say the enemy. So let's just do that. They made an attack upon the enemy. But if you want to say upon the enemies, because that's a plural and you want this to be a plural to match it, be my guest. Either way I would accept. Okay? And so that is exercise 65. There are 11 sentences in this exercise. So I didn't do all of the ones where we use in plus the accusative. There are some sentences in this exercise that don't use in plus the accusative at all. So you won't practice this concept for those sentences. But there are a couple more. And so those were some for you. Now the next exercise is after 65, 66. That's kind of a quick verbal one. 67 and 68. This is going to end the fourth declension, and then we start the fifth and final declension. Each of these two will have their own video. So just so you know, this one will not have a video for it. Okay, so we're getting close. All right, valete.